Back to the Desperate Historian, where there's no AI, no BS. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Miller. Say hello to the Falcon, my co-host. Maybe I'll have more to say in future episodes. I wanted to give some of my professional historical perspective on what Elon Musk is talking about doing and starting a new political party, the America Party, and kind of give some feedback on maybe where I think that might go. The political parties, third political parties in this country, are really interesting. They're really fascinating history when it comes to those. We can definitely measure this attempt against what has happened to other third political parties in this country's history. But throughout our country's history, we've pretty much been dominated by two political parties. When we started, we started with the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Then it was the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, or the Democratic Republicans, the Jeffersonian Democrats, whatever you want to call them. That was next. Then we had the Whigs and the Democrats, and then after the Civil War, it was Republicans and Democrats. And where Republicans and Democrats are on certain issues since the start of the 20th century, they've sort of flip-flopped on some important issues. But we've been pretty much stuck with Republicans and Democrats now since after the American Civil War. And but here's my takeaway on what Musk is talking about doing, what Musk is threatening to do. First of all, Musk always has always got these grand ambitions, says he's going to do this or that, and his follow through doesn't tend to be all that great. I mean, he's hoping to get to Mars. We'll see. Wants to create underground like railroad transportation and all kinds of things like that. Wants to have self-driving cars. Hey, he's done a lot for the electric cars, although that he did not invent that technology. But the electric cars, that's become a reality. But in terms of his other sort of grandiose plans, I don't know if he loses interest or is easily distracted or whatever. But we'll see. We'll see how far this goes. The thing that makes it interesting though is that he does have deep pockets. He does have cash to maybe make it interesting for Republicans who are in swing districts. So we'll see about that. But third parties have a history of really having an uphill climb in our nation's history. If they're not one of the establishment parties, it's really a struggle. And the big reasons for that is sort of inertia. You've got established parties that people identify with, they've been with for a long time, maybe generations in their families have identified with one of these parties. And so that's really tough. The established political parties also have a lot of money. They have donors, big donors that have supported them for long periods of time. And so that has been an uphill challenge for a lot of the third political parties. Another thing that is facing a new political party or an upstart political party, a third party, is just having the infrastructure. If you need to have a ground game, you need to have volunteers, you need to have people in place, you need to have precinct committee people, you need to have people who are willing to run for office and so forth. That's tough. And so if you don't have an infrastructure in place, or that ground game as some people call it, and talking heads who got to the media and so forth, and now you've got commentators who are making all kinds of content online. And so if you don't have that ground game, the infrastructure already in place, that can be really difficult. So third parties really have had a struggle in this country over time. Now, a lot of times the best case scenario for a third party, or worst case scenario, depending upon which end of the political spectrum you're on, is that they often become spoilers. And we've seen this a lot of times when a new political party will emerge, that they'll become a spoiler. I think about the election of 1912 when you have Woodrow Wilson running as a Democrat, and he's running against William Howard Taft, the establishment Republican, and Theodore Roosevelt decides that he wants to become president again. Roosevelt had lost in the primary to Taft, but had chosen to take part of the Republican Party and start a new party, the Progressive or Bull Moose Party. So Roosevelt's sort of breaking with the traditional Republican Party, that essentially handed the election to Woodrow Wilson. And Wilson was the first Southerner. He's originally from South Carolina. He was the first Southerner to win the presidency since after the Civil War, and only the second Democrat to win the presidency after the Civil War. But the Republicans fractured between Taft and Roosevelt. That's what happens in the election of 1912. I also think more recently about Ross Perot, election of 1992, where Perot, for those of you who were not alive back then, Perot was a wealthy Texas business person. He was into technology, into computers, and self-funded a campaign, bought commercials on primetime television. So you had a national audience and so forth. And there was a lot of frustration at that time with the two existing parties, and I mean that frustration always seems to be around. But Perot also, he kind of shot himself in the foot by getting in and out of the race, and then although the person that he picked to become his vice presidential running mate was a Vietnam War hero, he was not as polished as some of the politicians that he was going up against. So Perot made some questionable decisions. I actually saw Ross Perot give a speech on the campus of Purdue University during his campaign, and he was talking about the need for having a balanced budget, and he was against NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and so forth. And a lot of the things he was saying, I don't know how practical they were, but they were very prescient, and some of the issues that we're having currently. But anyway, with Ross Perot jumping in 1992, he takes votes away, probably the most from the Republicans, and gets about 19% of the votes, and he's able to essentially hand the election to Bill Clinton. Clinton only gets 43% of the total votes, but this hands elections to Clinton. So it's possible that third party candidates can have this sort of, they can be a spoiler. Maybe in the election of 2000, perhaps you had another party, the Green Party, that was a very, very close election, particularly in the swing state of Florida, between Al Gore and George W. Bush. And if the Green Party, with Ralph Nader was a candidate. If the Green Party had not been in that race, maybe things could have gone differently. So, kind of the best hope for third parties is to play spoiler. There's been some other prominent showings from politicians. John Anderson in 1980 got 6%. I think it was 6% of the election, 6% of the electorate from between Reagan and Carter. Of course, Reagan won pretty handily, so Anderson wasn't playing a spoiler or anything like that. And then those are all national races, all national elections. It's possible for someone to be a spoiler on a congressional election, or in a Senate seat, or in a local election, and a mayoral or governor race, something like that. So definitely a third party can have consequences there. But it's really hard. It's really an uphill battle for third parties to get going. Now, we have seen emergence of new parties in this country that do become dominant, and the most prominent example of that would be the Republican Party in the 1850s. The Republicans really formed out of what had been the Whigs, and the Whigs, particularly in the North, Democrats from the North who are not happy with the pro-slavery agenda of the National Democratic Party. So you had some Northern Democrats, you had some Whigs. There were some Free Soilers, which was another third party, and the Free Soilers sort of melded into this new Republican Party. That some abolitionists joined the Republican Party, and so the Republican Party really became a new party in the 1850s. In the dust of the Whigs, and became a new. And so when we see new parties in this country, I think it's more that you don't have a third party emerge. It's more that you have parties that get transformed. And we've seen this recently with the Republican Party. The Republican Party used to be anti-Russia, pro-free trade, and so forth. And really, Donald Trump and MAGA have transformed the Republican Party to become something quite different, a lot more protectionist, a lot more isolationist. And so and you can maybe even trace that back to the Tea Party movement, which was even earlier. So the current Republican Party is kind of a new party or a different party that got transformed. And so that's pretty interesting. But there's been lots of third parties in this country. The Know Nothings, um, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Constitutional Party. There's just been lots of these attempts. There was a party that's focused on temperance. So there's been lots of these attempts at a third party, and they just don't seem to go anywhere. And I kind of think that's what we're headed to with Elon Musk. Hey, I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. We'll have to find out. But I do think it's possible that Musk and his party could certainly be a spoiler in some situations. Could suck some of the oxygen out of the room, take up some of the money, cause some headaches for probably the Republicans, but you never know. So it's possible that Musk's attempt here at another party will play spoiler, but I don't think he'll do anything more than that. Hey, that's just my 2 cents. Thanks for tuning in to The Desperate Historian. I'll see you next time.